Hi, my name is Jerome Carslake, and I'm Director of the National Road Safety Partnership Program, which is delivered in partnership with Monash University Excellent Research Centre. I'm presenting the Art of Building Engaging Heavy Vehicle Toolbox Talks, and I would also like to acknowledge my co-author, Jennifer Rivera Gonzalez. And without her and a lot of other people in the project group, none of this would be possible. And another group I need to recognise at the very beginning is the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, as it's their heavy vehicle safety initiative, which is supported by the federal government, which has made this project entirely possible. The approach for today, I'm going to talk briefly around the origins of where these heavy vehicle toolbox talks have come from. I'm going to map out a bit of the process that we've gone through, how we've engaged and worked with industry to develop these, and then show some examples, because basically over the next 18 months, we're going to be releasing a large number of these as we move forward. So let's dive into this. Origins. For those of you who don't know or been to the NRSPP website, recommend going and checking it out. What we had on there originally was a whole lot of toolbox talks centered around the light vehicles, because we identified there was a big gap, and our steering committee supported developing a number of these, and we actually secured some industry funding to create the first lot. There's around sort of 18 that we went through and curated. But then what we identified is there was a gap beyond that, and probably creating short videos that could really illustrate the problem. And we do it really much around the adult learning sort of approach, which is what is it, why does it matter, and how do you mitigate it? And so what we did with these sort of toolbox talk packs that we designed in consultation with our industry group leadership was creating everything that you could possibly want. So facilitation guides, fact sheets, posters, PowerPoints, and those sort of components. But what we had was a gap, as we didn't have the videos in the first sort of lot. And then as we've started going through renewal, the first one we did was around Sunglare, or Sundazzle, as some people know. And then when we did that one, we presented it to the steering committee, on which Toll Group sat, and Toll Group actually went out and they used it, and they came back to us and they said, you know, this is a fantastic resource. It really engaged our drivers around a topic we've struggled to articulate or show them. So they sort of said, look, is there a way we could actually go through and curate a whole lot of these for the heavy vehicle sector as well? And so from that, we sort of identified the opportunity and some funding to take it all forward. And so we then set out on the journey and say, well, let's create a working group, let's make a case for it, and then let's apply for heavy vehicle safety initiative funding, and that can allow us to go ahead and do it all. So when we pulled the working group together, we sat there and we wanted a diversity of organisations within the heavy vehicle sector. The goal is these aren't supposed to centre down to any sector, but to sit at a high level and a general sort of approach. So to do that, we went through and we said, okay, who can these various organisations, they're quite large and have the resources to allow us to have drivers and to provide input and support us as we're going forward. And these are the amazing organisations that stepped in and became part of the working group from the very beginning. So if you come up here, you can sort of see the process that we sort of followed. We sort of created the Toolbox Talk Working Group. They then went through and helped us to design and select the topics, and we had basically around 22 that they sort of identified, which is now stretched out to 24. So once they sort of identified it, we then agreed to them with a development process, and which we would check in with them along the way. And what we the process we went through to make it rather sort of simple is we developed in a series of thematic batches. And what we then do is when we engage with the industry groups and we sort of walk them through it, as you can see here, we then would work with MUAC. They would dive in, research topics, and that would be Jennifer. She would nuance it, but then by having them in thematics, there was sort of all these different sort of streams so it became quite a natural sort of conversation for the working group and industry partners, is they could see how they're all interlinked, but they don't double up. So it's not like you're hearing the same thing over and over again. Each one of them slightly nuanced and very specific to that sort of problem. So once Jennifer had gone through and did the fact sheet, she sense tested it with industry, and it's all about writing in a way that it engages with the driver, sort of gets into their sort of level and resonates with them. We test it with a number of peer reviews, industry, and it's all checked off. And once it's approved by the working group, it then moves on to our my interns from Swinburne University, and they'll then go through and give it an entire unique design. So every single toolbox talk has its own unique sort of special approach, but it all sits within a bracket of the governance, which you can see down in the corner there, called Toolbox Talks, and that's the mother overbrand that sits over it all. But each pack is designed in a way that really engages the driver. So you see it and you go, okay, I get it, and it resonates. And quite often, a lot of the catch cries that go in comes from truck drivers, but I'll come to that in a moment. Once we've gone through its design, we then shoot it on to NHVR. NHVR reviews the fact sheets and the design. And once we then take their feedback, we address that. But also out of that sort of component we've had with the fact sheets and developing those sort of components is a number of interview questions. And this is probably one of the key secrets of how we go about developing these is we'll have 3 to 4 questions for every single fact sheet. And then we'll set up these interviews with the truck drivers. And so we'll have probably between 10 and 15 truck drivers for every sort of batch that we go through. And so for them, it's like a continuous conversation interview. And so we'll have these interviews with truck drivers using Zoom or in person behind cameras. We have permission documents and onboarding that goes through. And so we'll go through and record and take them through this sort of journey. But the goal being is it's got to be truck drivers talking to truck drivers. And that way it will really go ahead and resonate. Any footage that we decide to use, we supply back to the host organization, to the driver. They have to approve and they have to be happy as to how they're represented. And I must admit, I've come across some amazing rock star truck drivers, and I think it's been a fantastic part of the journey that going through. We then go ahead and develop the videos, which tell the narrative and expand the fact sheets. And once again, this all then passes up to the working group, which once they're approved everything, it then goes on to NHVR for final sort of approval as well. And once that's all done and dusted, pulled together, the last stage is we then talk with Swinburne Bureau, and they develop an individual marketing package for every single one as well. So we drop one a month, and they've also created the branding, the mother brand that sits over it all. And as they sort of move through and develop it, they can then say with those all standalone videos, we can then use them as promoting. And they also created a single video that sits over that can use as promotional material, all of which is articulated by truck drivers as well. And then the last stage we're looking at is going through some evaluation to help the continuous improvement, which would then go back into the cycle. We'd then address it. Any changes have to be ticked off and agreed to by the Heavy Vehicle Working Group. So you can sort of see the cycle in there. And I've got to sing out the enormous praise once again to the industry partners that you can see listed here. They have been absolutely fantastic in coming back to us. We meet every 6 to 8 weeks to go through and review the batches, and they've given us drivers. And you'll see some of them coming up very soon. So what does the Heavy Vehicle Toolbox Toolbox Talks include? Well, this is just one example looking at the fatigue, and there's a distraction one sitting there as well. What you can see here is these packs, there's a facilitation guide, there's the all sorts of elements. So anyone can pick it up, they can read through, and then can become an expert. They can also sit there and there's a whole lot of questions they can throw out and different answers and how they can stimulate and draw on as well to prompt it to the audiences. But then what we've also gone and developed with the fact sheets, there's a general fact sheet that sits over, and then there's one for drivers and there's one for organizations as well. So they can choose which way they want to go, and they're also in color and grayscale, and all these are zipped up and downloaded as well. And as you can see here, there's just 2 little videos here, one thing here from fatigue and one thing here from the distraction. And these are sort of just examples of what you can download and use, really engage the drivers as they're going through. But the whole idea is getting them in the room. These Toolbox Talk is around 10 to 15 minutes safety discussion. And the goal of these is it's about a discussion. It's not about talking to the drivers as you go through it all. So, and a lot of our catch cries, which you'll see sort of coming up, are featured from the truck drivers. But first of all, let me just share with you a promo one from the Heavy Vehicle Toolbox Talk on fatigue, and you'll see exactly what it's sort of talking about here. So this is courtesy of the Swinburne Bureau.
You tend to be a bit tired when it comes to a certain part of the day.
Sounds scary, but where you can't really remember what you've done 5 minutes earlier, and you forget where you're going. Then you snap out of it, and you're like, oh, I think I need a break.
You don't have fuel in your car, the body's exactly the same.
What you eat affects your body, affects your mind.
And the serpent you'll see there is the thematic on what they use to represent the risks of being at the road. As it moves around, it can strike at any sort of time. And so what you see there is those little nuances where they can use them as to engaging with the drivers, and they actually act as a conversation. Talking with a transport company the other day, they really made the point that they're finding out that their Heavy Vehicle Toolbox Talk discussions are exactly that, discussions, because they see these videos go up. The drivers are stimulated to share it, and the facilitators are armed with the information of how to engage with a decent sort of conversation. This is the next one. And as it's, I guess, Are You Okay month here in Australia, I thought this is a really suitable one. We've just dropped this sort of Toolbox Talks, and these aren't even released yet, but all of these snippets can be also downloaded. But this is a point of view from a manager in the organization.
As a team leader, when I was running the Dandenong yard, the drivers, you could see them every day on their behaviours. And you could tell when they might have been a bit down, you know. So I'd pull them aside and say, "How are you feeling today, mate? Is everything okay?" You know, make sure their well-being's good and that they can be in charge of this heavy vehicle. A situation some time ago where a driver came in to start his day, and he came in so fast in his car, and just his demeanour was angry, really angry. And, you know, I pulled him aside, and there were some personal things going on there. And so we sent him home because, you know, it was my opinion that he wasn't in control of anything. I sat him down, didn't let him leave for about an hour or so, made sure he could drive home. When I'm driving myself, being aware of how I'm feeling and where I am is very important. But once again, I'm only human, mate, and it certainly can go the other way. You know, if 99% of the time you can keep on top of it, I think we're doing well.
The best thing is it's helping bust myths as well. Just how amazing some of these truck drivers, the transport companies are. And when we think about it going through, we've interviewed just over 50 drivers thus far. And these are the three key themes that really flowed through from every single interview that we've gone through. They love their job. For them to get home safe, they need other drivers to be safe around them. And this draws back to the fact that a lot of the third-party instances are not the fault of a truck driver. So they can do everything in their power, but they're just so large. And they're so cognizant of what's going on out there. And that is because they are highly professional and super skilled in what they do. And I think this is where the advantage of this is as a second component is truck drivers talking to each other and just showing and sharing their skill set with each other and the sort of learnings. And here's a great one from Cuz that features in our current Heavy Vehicle Toolbox talk on Are You Okay to Drive?
You just sort of know if they're very quiet. Yeah, something's up there. All right, I'll catch him later on. I'll get him by himself, and then we'll just say, "You all right, mate? Want a cup of coffee? Let's have a cup of coffee. Come on." I'm not going, no. I said, "No, I'm pulling in for a cup of coffee. Let's go. I'm waiting for you. Even if he's half an hour behind me, I'll back right off. Wait till he gets in. I'll see you at the BP." Exactly that.
So what we've really found with these is there is no stereotype of a truck driver, as you can sort of see there. They're an amazing sort of community group. But this is the goal. With the Toolbox Talks, it's telling their story. They're talking to each other. And that's how to get it to really resonate with each other. These are the topics that we're going through, and you can sort of see the pipeline of production and just the number and how long it's going to take as we go through. They are all entirely free to download, and we're always open to more truck drivers and other groups. And the goal is to do an evaluation to draw on this as we get closer towards the end, and we'll report on how things are going and lessons learned from that sort of stage. And the other part we have what's called our soapboxes. At the end of every interview, we ask our truck drivers to share in 30 seconds to 45 seconds, what's a key take-home message you'd love to share with the world around being a truck driver and that you'd love everyone to know. And so we put this out there, and you'll see these shared through our social posts. And I recommend you to check them out because it's just fascinating insights into their sort of world, which I think every truck driver can resonate with. And we're very proud to act as a voice for them. And this is Helen from Bingo, an amazing female driver and featured rather prominently. And this is a great little toolbox that we'll be sharing next year as part of International Women's Day. So
I would definitely encourage a lot more female drivers in this industry. Don't be scared if it's something you actually find yourself going into or wanting to go into. Don't think it's a male industry, because a lot of these guys are like dads and brothers. So it's very welcoming. Give it a go. Give anything a go. Give anything a chance. And if you do something, give it your all, because you never know what will happen.
So this is just one example. Again, as I mentioned behind this, success is a result of an amazing team. There's many people contributing to this. This is a list of them all. So thank you all very much for your time and support in helping deliver these. And I know they're making an impact. So I'm hearing from transport companies who are very proud to feature them, to share them, to use them. I mean, every time we release a new one, there's massive downloads. So it's very exciting to see. So thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to taking questions. To download them, this is where you can sort of go onto the industry website. Feel free to have a look on heavy vehicles. And the other one is around Heavy Vehicle Toolbox Talk snippets, where you can get little 30 to 30 second to a minute ones if you want to grab them at all. And they're the ones we're sharing through our socials. So thank you very much and have a great conference.